Hello, my loves. I wanted to do something a little different today and talk about some outdated, obscure, and forgotten music related products from years ago. I always find it fascinating to look back on things that were trendy in their time, but have since become a nostalgic novelty that serve basically no use today. So grab some Gushers or Trix yogurt or whatever other sugary garbage we ate when we were kids, and let's take a look at some retro products, starting with a pretty obvious one, Hit Clips. Launching at retail in August 2000, Hit Clips were essentially a bargain bin iPod for kids. Just how bargain bin? They literally began as McDonald's Happy Meal toys, that bargain bin. The popularity these gained among kids from the McDonald's tie-in led to them being turned into a full-blown product, and these babies were popular back then, selling roughly 20 million players and cartridges in about 2 years. But what was a Hit Clip exactly? Basically, it was a mini-sized portable music player that you'd put a cartridge into to play a song. 60 seconds of a song. Yeah, this was the early 2000s, and technology just wasn't really there yet, so each Hit Clip cartridge would only play a brief snippet of each song, typically the chorus. The cartridges themselves were sold separately, though some came bundled in with the player, and had clips on them that could attach to the player itself, like little mini keychains. And honestly, seeing a bunch of these things all clipped together is kinda satisfying to me. The players themselves sold for $20, which isn't too bad, but each cartridge costed $3.99. Yes, $4 to have the chorus of a song played out of a lo-fi plastic toy. On top of that, the players only had one earphone attached, and early models had pretty short wires connecting them, which kinda defeats the purpose of clipping them onto your pants when the cord wouldn't even be able to reach your ears. It's definitely silly looking back on it, but to be fair, the iPod didn't debut until 2001, so it's not like the portable music player had been totally perfected yet. Obviously there was the Sony Walkman, but those played regular sized cassette tapes. What if I wanted to listen to Don't Mess With My Man on the cute little microchip with a cool picture, goddammit? Eventually, an updated version of the player, called Hit Clips Discs, came out, though these were still just cartridges that were simply shaped like a disc, but they could play up to 2 minutes of music. A technological marvel, truly. Alright, I must confess, I never had one of these. I was born in 1998, so I was too young to really get any enjoyment out of them, but that's probably for the best, since I could totally see young me being obsessed with these. I had a thing for extremely tiny toys when I was little, so mixing that with Britney Spears probably would have accelerated the rate I turned gay. Even though the functionality was lacking, I'd imagine most kids probably wanted these for the looks alone, and I totally would have been the same. The players came in all sorts of different models, like a mini boombox, an actual pen, and even a tiny little cell phone. I mean, look at how adorable that is. I absolutely would have thrown a tantrum to make my parents buy this cheap piece of plastic. There was even an FM radio cartridge sold, which turned your Hit Clip into a little portable radio. I am genuinely curious if these would still work nowadays. I don't even listen to radio, but maybe that's because I don't have my own personal player. Like I said before, Hit Clips actually were a hit, and didn't get discontinued until 2004, about 2.5 years after the iPod launched, which honestly is kind of impressive. For something so clearly outdated, even in its heyday, it managed to grab enough kids' attention. So much so that over 50 songs were released on the format, from popular artists of the time such as Britney, Avril Lavigne, the Backstreet Boys, and Simple Plan. Although some older artists such as Madonna, the Kingsmen, and the Jackson 5 also had some cartridges released. Imagine one of your parents listening to ABC on a Hit Clip. That is a wild mental image. Hilary Duff served as the spokesperson for the brand in 2003, though she was replaced with another Disney Channel queen, Raven-Symoné, when Hit Clips discs came out in 2004, though at that point, they were basically on their way out anyways. There's just no way these would have survived in the same world as the iPod, especially considering how a cartridge with just a third of a song was $4, when a full song on iTunes was just $1. Still, it's kind of impressive they lasted as long as they did, and nowadays they serve as a nostalgic memory for those who grew up with them. I wish one of my older siblings had these. Maybe they did and I don't remember, but I would love to actually see and use one in person. Just let me listen to Willa Ford with my Hit Clip, goddammit, that's all I want in life. Hit Clips were popular enough for Disney to come out with a similar product called mix clips in 2005. These were SD cards that came with preloaded music, meant to be played on the Disney Mix Stick, an MP3 player for kids. Even though these were more expensive than hit clips, you at least got your money's worth, since the SD cards could hold way more music. You could also use your own SD cards with your own music if you wanted, though again, that just begs the question, why not get an iPod at that point? Imagine sitting on the bus and someone pulls out a Disney Mix Stick. Icon behavior, honestly. The line proved to be pretty popular, and even expanded to include Disney Mix Max, which was also able to play movies. Little me would have absolutely worn out the Hannah Montana one. The line lasted until about 2010, and since then I haven't really seen them ever brought up by anyone the same way hit clips have been. Maybe it's because hit clips were the first product of its kind and made a bigger impact, leading to the kids who had them to look back on them more fondly, while mix clips may have been popular, but lacked the initial wow factor. It could also be that hit clips were just cuter and had more personality and charm, or maybe kids just had iPods anyways by the late 2000s and didn't care about some little Mickey Mouse MP3 player. I remember my first iPod was my sister's old iPod Touch that she gave to me when she got her first iPhone, and I don't remember exactly when I got that, but it must have been around 2009, and I know for damn sure I would not have cared about some Disney mix clip. Still, these products were an interesting novelty that really could have only existed in the 2000s, which makes them fun to look back on as outdated but still charming little pieces of tech. Another novelty music product marketed towards kids was Tooth Tunes, which was actually made by the same company as hit clips, Tiger Electronics. These launched in 2007 and were essentially toothbrushes that played music while you brushed. It wasn't as simple as a toothbrush with a speaker though, as the music was actually conducted through your teeth, then through your jawbone, and then into your inner ear. That is way too scientific for me to understand, but it sounds pretty cool regardless. Apparently, the music also got louder the harder you brushed, which actually seems like a horrible idea. Like, I don't think you're supposed to brush your teeth that hard like that, but here Tooth Tunes was encouraging kids to potentially get receding gums, also they could listen to Ashley Tisdale. Aside from that, Tooth Tunes is actually a pretty clever idea. A lot of kids hate brushing their teeth, so what better way to get them in the habit of doing it than luring them in with their favorite songs? And there was no shortage of songs either. Someone on Reddit compiled a list of all of them, and it's actually kind of crazy how many there were. A lot of them were from Disney Channel acts, like Miley Cyrus, the Cheetah Girls, and songs from High School Musical and Camp Rock, but they also had a bunch from other popular artists of the time, like Kelly Clarkson, Rihanna, One Direction, and Evanescence. What parent bought their kid an Evanescence Tooth Tune? That's amazing. Although the most shocking one to me has to be the Fancy by Iggy Azalea one, which I can't find a picture online for the life of me, but dear God, I want it now. These must have been pretty popular to keep being made up until 2015. I feel like I do remember seeing them at grocery and drugstores back then, but I might just be misremembering. I definitely remember the commercials though, those were awesome. I couldn't find any definitive statement on why they were discontinued, but it seems like the commonly accepted reason is that they were 1, a fad, and 2, $10 each, which for a kid's toothbrush I guess is kind of a lot. I also have a feeling that kids probably got bored with hearing the same song every time they brushed their teeth, for presumably 3 months at a time, and probably pestered their parents to buy them other ones before they really needed to. I know my ass would have had a damn lineup of Tooth Tunes. I am not being confined to one song, and little me would have absolutely eaten The Only Girl in the World, Round and Round, and Best of Both Worlds brushes up. Maybe if they came with multiple songs on each brush that you could switch between, it would have been better. But regardless, I'm overthinking this. Tooth Tunes were a pretty cool product that I'm sure helped plenty of kids get over the mundanity of brushing. Now, as for a more serious music product that's gone the way of the dodo, the Zune was Microsoft's answer to Apple's iPod, which obviously was one of the biggest products of the 2000s. The Zune seemed to be about as good, and some have argued even better, than the iPod, but the real problem it faced was the timing. The Zune launched in 2006, 5 years after the iPod, and basically everyone had one at that point, so convincing customers to switch over was no small feat. It also didn't help that they just weren't as sexy as the iPod, with their comparatively bulkier size, although I do really like the Frutiger Metro design of the interface. They did eventually get smaller with later models, but these things were dead on arrival to begin with. There was just no competing with the iPod back then. Another reason for the product's demise, and this is petty and I'm actually just kind of making this up, but I swear it has to be true, but Zune is just a really dumb name in my opinion. It sounds like one of those onomatopoeia words that popped up in the old Batman series. Zunes clearly did not catch on with the general public, as they barely achieved a fraction of the iPod sales. To put it in perspective, in the holiday season of 2008, Zunes brought in roughly $85 million in revenue, while the iPod brought in $3.37 billion. Finding a Zune owner was like finding a unicorn. They were that rare. I never had a Zune. I mean, let's be real, who actually did? But I've heard it actually was a pretty decent alternative to the iPod. There are still people who defend the devices as being underrated to this day, despite the line being discontinued in 2012. It seems like current Zune defenders emphasize how the product is strictly focused on music, and isn't bogged down by the multitude of apps and other distractions that are on modern-day smartphones. Zunes were simple. You bought one to listen to music, and had the option to also watch videos, listen to podcasts, and look at pictures, but the overwhelming focus was on the music, which honestly is kind of a novel idea nowadays. We're also used to our smartphones being literally everything. There are portable music players, web browsers, cameras, calculators, GPSs, and ironically, least of all, our actual phones. So to have a product that literally is just a portable music player in 2024 may be more impractical, but I could see why some people may prefer the simplicity of that. I can't personally speak to how good the Zune was, but at least some people got and continue to get enjoyment out of them. As someone who still uses iTunes instead of streaming, I understand the feeling of being a fossil. And speaking of fossils, let me know some more old, outdated, and forgotten tech from years ago that you guys had in the comments, and I'll see you next time.